On my 29th birthday, my phone didn't light up once. No half-asleep call from my mom, no quick HB text from my dad, not even a lazy emoji on Facebook. Just another day in downtown Chicago, another reminder that in my parents' narrative, I was the steady background character who didn't need attention, praise, or celebration. Around lunchtime, while I was eating at my desk between risk reports, I opened Facebook to kill a few minutes. At the top of my feed was my mom's latest On This Day post, a collage of my younger brother, Owen, holding some participation trophy from middle school, with a caption about how he'd always been destined for greatness and how proud she was of her brilliant, creative son. My name didn't appear once, or that's when it really clicked. They'd forgotten my birthday again. The first time, a couple of years earlier, I'd made excuses for them. They're getting older, they're distracted. People forget. This time, with my mom actively gushing over Owen on the same day she couldn't be bothered to text me, I couldn't lie to myself. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was a pattern. I stared at my monitor, my latest quarterly bonus still sitting untouched in my account, and something in me snapped into place. I was tired of being invisible. If they wouldn't pay attention to my promotions, my bonuses, my entire life, I would put something in front of them that they physically couldn't scroll past. 3 hours later, I was standing under fluorescent lights in a suburban showroom in Schaumburg, staring at a metallic graphite Mercedes AMG C63. Well, the kind of car my parents always said was for people who don't know the value of $1. Flashy, wasteful, irresponsible. The sticker price with options came out just under $90,000. It wasn't revenge so much as a statement. You can keep pretending not to see me, but the world won't. That evening, I drove the car back into the city and up to a rooftop parking garage where you can see the whole Chicago skyline. The sky was fading into pink and orange. The Sears Tower, I refused to call it anything else, cutting into the clouds. My friend and unofficial mentor, Nadia, met me up there with her phone in hand. "Lean on the hood," she said, backing up. "Look like you actually believe you deserve this." I stood in my navy work dress and blazer, the city behind me, the Mercedes badge gleaming by my elbow. She took a dozen shots. One made me pause, me looking straight into the camera, not smiling, not faking anything, just steady. I opened Facebook, because that's where my parents live online, and typed, 29 today, wrapped a big quarter at work, and used my bonus to finally buy myself the car I've been dreaming about. No handouts, no investors, just late nights, spreadsheets, and a lot of coffee. I hit post. Within seconds, the notifications started. Coworkers, college friends, my old boss from my first job. "You earned this. Proud of you. That car is insane." One guy in my department joked about hitching a ride to the office now. I checked the seen by list. My mother had viewed it. My father, too. No like, no comment, no call. Nadia glanced over my shoulder. "Give them a bit," she said dryly. "They're probably pulling up a calculator." We went back to my apartment, ordered Thai, and while I half-watched a show, Nadia sat at my kitchen table with her laptop, tying up something else entirely. The complaint we'd been drafting about Owen's startup accelerator. It was almost midnight when my phone finally rang. "Dad." Nadia raised an eyebrow and I put it on speaker. "Lena," he said, skipping any greeting. "What is that car?" "A Mercedes," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "A MGC 63. I've wanted one for years." "Don't be smart with me," he snapped. "Where did you get the money? Do you understand how reckless this looks? Posting that online like some influencer? We need to talk, in person, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Your mother and I expect you here." I looked at Nadia. She just mouthed, "Here we go." "I'll come," I said. "But if we're talking about money, we're putting everything on the table." He ignored that. "Good," he said, and hung up. He thought this was about me buying an expensive car. He had no idea I had already mapped out, down to the dollar, exactly how much they had quietly poured into my brother's fantasy life. To understand why that phone call cut so deep, you have to rewind to the previous Christmas. I was 28 then, working obscene hours as a senior risk analyst for an investment firm in Chicago's Loop. I made more than either of my parents ever had individually. My days were spreadsheets, stress tests, and trying to keep multi-million-dollar portfolios from imploding. In my parents' story, though, I was just the sensible one. Reliable, boring, fine on her own. The star was Owen. At 27, he was the founder of a mental wellness app that, as far as I could tell, existed mainly as mood boards, catchphrases, and prototypes he kept tweaking instead of shipping. But in our parents' eyes, he was a visionary. That Christmas Eve, they made a big production of him arriving. My mom practically ran to the door. My dad clapped him on the back as soon as he walked in. Owen set down this weird, abstract wooden model on the coffee table and announced it was a physical representation of his product experience. My dad stared at it like it was a museum piece. Now this, he said, is the kind of thing investors go crazy for. My mom took 20 photos from every angle and immediately posted them to the family group chat with a paragraph about how proud she was of her brave entrepreneur son. Later, over dinner, I casually mentioned that my team had just finished a risk assessment on one of our largest funds that had likely saved the firm from tens of millions in potential losses if the market turned. My mom smiled politely. "That's nice, honey. Office work must be so tiring." Then she turned back to Owen and asked about his user acquisition strategy. Sitting there with my mashed potatoes, listening to them fawn over an idea that didn't even have paying users yet, while my very real, very measurable work was treated like background noise, something hardened in me. I told myself it would even out, that once they saw actual outcomes, grown adults would care about results more than pitch decks. Then the numbers started bothering me. Owen's supposed startup life didn't add up. He lived in a loft in a trendy part of Milwaukee, worked out of a glossy co-working space, flew to conferences, paid for branding, sponsored events. Yet he had no real investors, no paying clients beyond maybe a handful of friends, and he never seemed to panic about rent. Months later, at a professional conference in Minneapolis, I ended up chatting with a venture capitalist about the wave of founders popping up everywhere. Owen's accelerator, Launch Space Collective, came up in passing. I mentioned it, expecting a nod of recognition. The VC actually snorted into his coffee. "Oh, Launch Space. It's basically a vanity incubator. Startups pay huge fees to sit in exposed brick offices, have mentors give them pep talks, and post photos that make them look like the next unicorn. Very few ever raise real money. It's more of a subscription to a lifestyle than a path to a business." I smiled like it was amusing industry gossip. Inside, my stomach dropped. On the flight home, all the puzzle pieces started snapping together. His rent, his travel, his endless programs. If he wasn't funding it, someone was. Around that time, my dad had asked me to help them go paperless with their banking because Mom hated the mail pile. I set up their online statements, showed him how to log in, and in the process, saw which accounts they used and how their transfers were labeled. I didn't need passwords after that. I just started paying attention. There was a pattern. On or around the first of each month, a transfer hit Owen's account. The amount was always the same, $2,000, not $2,017.43, a clean, round $2,000. The memo line said things like living help or startup expenses. Of course, I opened a spreadsheet. 24 months of those payments alone came to $48,000. Then I layered in what I knew from conversations. The time they'd helped him cover a surprise tax bill, the new laptop they'd proudly bought him, because every founder needs the best tools, the conference in Denver they'd chipped in for, the branding agency deposit my mom had bragged about paying. Conservative estimate, another $50,000 to $60,000 over 3 years. In total, roughly $100,000 of my parents' money had gone into Owen's company, which, from what I could see, had maybe $1,500 in actual revenue. 2 years before, when I'd asked them to loan me $25,000 for a down payment on a modest condo in a not even cool part of Chicago, they'd told me it would build character if I did it by myself. "You're strong, Lena," my dad had said. "You don't need help, save, work for it. You'll appreciate it more." So I did. I pulled extra hours, skipped trips, and bought the condo on my own. Seeing the numbers laid out in neat rows on my screen made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just that they forgot my birthday. It was that they had diverted almost everything they could spare into Owen's fantasy and told me explicitly that I didn't need or deserve the same help. I didn't confront them then. I documented. I pulled statements, copied down dates, noted amounts, cross-referenced with Owen's bragging posts online. So grateful for my accelerator family. Another amazing conference. Investing in myself, always with slick photos attached. Well, by the time my latest bonus hit and I started thinking seriously about that Mercedes, the folder on my laptop labeled Family was essentially a forensic report. The car, ironically, started like everything else in my life, with a spreadsheet. 2 weeks before my 29th birthday, my bonus landed. After taxes and deductions, just under $75,000, more than my parents' combined household income when I was a kid. I stared at the number in my online banking, feeling both triumphant and bitter. I had done this. No cosigner, no monthly transfers from anyone, no parents telling their friends they were supporting my dream. The day after my birthday passed unacknowledged. Again, I met Nadia at a cafe near my office. I told her about the forgotten birthday, the collage post about Owen, the transfers I'd been tracking. She set her mug down slowly and gave me one of her razor-sharp looks. "Let me get this straight," she said. "They refused to loan you $25,000 for a down payment on an actual asset, but they've funneled around $100,000 into an illusion. Pay-to-play incubator, pretty offices, conferences, and now they're furious that you used your own bonus to buy a car they personally disapprove of." When she said it like that, it sounded almost absurd. "I don't even want to yell at them," I said. "They just spin it as me being dramatic or jealous and then pivot back to Owen's innovation. I want them to see it, to not be able to spin it." Nadia thought for a moment. "Then make it impossible to minimize," she said. "Something visible, expensive, and undeniably yours. They say only irresponsible rich people buy certain cars. Fine. Buy one responsibly and park it where they have to look at it." She smirked. "They think real money belongs with Owen's big ideas. Show them what your boring, invisible office job actually produces." We pulled up dealership sites. I'd always loved the look of the AMG sedans. Powerful but not absurd, still practical enough to take to work. We ran the numbers. If I put $60,000 down, paid off my existing small car loan, and financed the rest at a good rate, the monthly payment would be easily manageable, even with my other obligations. By the time we finished our second round of coffee, I had an appointment at a Mercedes showroom. The salesman clearly wasn't expecting a woman in a simple blazer carrying a folder to be his serious buyer. That changed when I handed over my income verification and credit score and started asking detailed questions about warranty terms and projected depreciation. "What made you decide on this now?" he asked conversationally while printing paperwork. "My family thinks only my brother's dreams are worth investing in," I said. I decided it was time to put real money into my own reality. He gave me a confused little smile, but I meant it. I put $60,000 down that afternoon and drove out of the lot in a car my parents had mocked in the abstract their entire lives. While I was signing the last pages, Nadia sat in the waiting area, digging deeper into Launch Space Collective. She found threads in obscure founder groups describing outrageous fees, bait-and-switch promises, and aggressive behavior when people tried to leave. By the time I picked her up from the curb in my new car, she had a draft complaint to the State Attorney General and Consumer Protection Agency ready to go. "You're not just buying a car," she said as she slid into the passenger seat. "You're picking a fight with a whole story your parents have told themselves for years." I merged onto the highway, the city skyline opening up in front of me through the windshield, and for the first time I felt like I wasn't just reacting to their choices. I was setting my own terms. The next night, I pulled into my parents' driveway in their sleepy Indiana suburb 10 minutes early. The Mercedes engine idled quietly before I shut it off. Their house hadn't changed since I was a kid. Tidy yard, seasonal wreath, that default. Looks like a stable family facade. My laptop bag felt unusually heavy and stuffed with printed spreadsheets and highlights of bank transfers. My mom opened the door with a too bright smile that faltered when she looked past me and saw the car. "Oh," she said, recovering quickly. "You made good time." Inside, my dad stood near the mantel like he was about to present a case to a jury. Owen sat on the couch, legs bouncing, shadows under his eyes. I sat in the armchair opposite and waited. My dad started right away. "This car," he said, nodding toward the window, "is completely over the top. We didn't raise you to be irresponsible. A $90,000 vehicle. Why?" "Who told you it was impulsive?" I asked mildly. My mom folded her arms tightly. "This isn't like you. You're supposed to be the careful one. People will see that online and think you're wasting money or hiding something." Before I could answer, Owen jumped in. "Speaking of hiding something," he said, his voice tight, "I got a call from some investigator about Launch Space, about my business. They had numbers, names of other founders, even my referral codes. Did you talk to someone, Lena?" My dad's gaze snapped to me. "Did you go to someone about your brother's program?" he demanded. "You know how much we've put into his future. You don't get to tear that down because you're angry." There it was. Sabotage. Jealousy. The script they always used when I stepped out of my assigned role. I reached down, lifted the folder onto the coffee table, and began laying out pages. I didn't tear anything down, I said. I reported a pattern of behavior from a company that's been bleeding this family for years. And I'm done pretending I can't see what's in front of me. My mom's hand flew to her mouth when she saw the bank logos. My dad leaned forward, frowning. What is all this? He asked. This, I said, tapping the first sheet, is a record of what you send to Owen every month. $2,000 like clockwork for the last 2 years. That's $48,000 just in direct transfers, marked living help and startup funds. My dad bristled. We help him with living costs. It's expensive out there. Starting a business takes money. Parents support their kids. I slid the next page toward them, with lines estimating rent in his neighborhood, Launch Space's monthly fee, travel, branding, and other extras. I agree, I said. So let's look at the scale of that support. Between the regular transfers and what you've told me on the phone you've covered, you're near $100,000 over 3 years for a company that, based on the data I can see, has earned almost nothing. That can't be right, my mom whispered. We don't have that kind of money. You do, I said. Or you did. You just chose to channel it into this. Then I flipped to the page that still made my chest ache. Meanwhile, 3 years ago, I asked if you could loan me $25,000 for a down payment on a condo. Not a risk, not a pitch deck, a home. You told me it would be better for my character if I figured it out alone. My dad winced. You had a good job. You weren't in trouble. You always manage. He needed us more than you did. I met his eyes. So, being reliable means I get told to tough it out, and being reckless means you open your wallet. That's the lesson? My mom's voice sharpened. We're not punishing you. You've always been so independent. You never asked for much. He needed encouragement. He's different. I laughed once without humor. I did ask, I said. I asked for that loan. I called you when my team saved that big client. You made a comment about how tired I must be and then put Owen on speaker to tell me about his logo designer. I emailed you when I got promoted. You responded with a thumbs up and then sent 10 messages in the family chat, hyping his demo day. I could feel my hands shaking now, not from fear, but from finally saying what had been sitting in my throat for years. You built an entire financial and emotional support system around his dream, I said, and left me to build my reality alone. Owen slammed his palm down. This isn't about your condo, he burst out. Launch Space gave me mentors, a network. Why, we were close to a seed round before your stupid complaint. You're just pissed no one threw you a party for doing math. I turned to him. You know what Launch Space actually is? I asked. They charge you thousands a month to pretend you're making progress. They feature you in their marketing, then use you to recruit other people into the same trap. They didn't see you as a visionary, Owen. They saw you as a customer, and you sold mom and dad on the same illusion. My dad snapped. That's enough. You don't talk to your brother like that in this house. This attitude, this resentment, it's exactly why we're worried about that car. Only people playing with dirty money or lottery winners buy toys like that. If Nadia had been there, she would have rolled her eyes. I didn't. I bought that car with money I earned working in a field you barely understand and never really asked about, I said. Nobody bailed me out. Nobody gave me a monthly allowance. I turned down vacations to build my savings. You see the Mercedes and assume I've gone off the rails. You never once asked how I got to the point where I could buy it. I gathered the pages into a neat stack. You wanted to talk about reckless money decisions? I said quietly. Here's what's reckless, throwing nearly $100,000 into a company with no product market fit because you like the story. Telling your daughter she'll be stronger if she struggles alone while you subsidize your son's fantasy. Ignoring every red flag because they don't match the golden child image in your head. The living room, my childhood living room, went silent. My mom sank back into the couch. My dad stared at the totals without speaking. Owen's leg stopped bouncing. I stood and slung my bag over my shoulder. You called this meeting to lecture me about a car, I said. We've had the real conversation now. You know exactly how much your favoritism has cost, in actual dollars. I'm not here to ask you to fix it. I've already learned not to expect that. I'm here to tell you I'm done paying the emotional price for choices you keep making. My mom's voice was small. We didn't know. I paused at the doorway. You didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. Outside, the Mercedes looked almost obscene, parked next to their aging sedan. As I backed down the driveway, I saw all three of them standing in the doorway, washed in the porch light. and suddenly looking far smaller than they ever had when I was a kid. For once, I wasn't the one left on the outside in the dark. 2 mornings later, we got word. The state had picked up the complaint. Nadia appeared in my doorway at work with her phone. Launch Space is officially under investigation, she said. A G's office plus 2 other regulators because they're operating across state lines. And look, other founders are already filing similar reports now that someone's cracked it open. We scanned the early details, hidden fees, misleading guarantees of warm intros to investors, penalizing people who tried to leave. It was worse than either of us had guessed. That afternoon, my dad called again. This time he sounded older. Investigators came by, he said without preamble. They want Owen to come in for a formal interview. Yes, with a lawyer. They said he referred a lot of other startups to Launch Space. They used a word I never thought I'd hear about my son: complicity. I pictured Owen grinning in photos, tagging Launch Space, dragging other hopeful founders into the glossy trap. I know exactly what kind of trouble he could be in, I said. That's why I went to the state. This isn't just bad luck, it's structural, and you poured nearly everything you could into it. There was a long pause. You started this, my dad finally said, voice trembling. If you had concerns, you could have come to us. Instead, you went to the government. They could ruin his life. No, I said evenly. The people who sold him that lie could ruin his life. You, by writing checks without asking questions, could ruin his life. And the only thing I did was refuse to watch it happen in silence. He took a breath. I knew what was coming next before he said it. We need to meet again, he said. Tonight. We've talked to a lawyer. This is going to be expensive. Please, Lena. For your brother, for the family. Part of me wanted to say no. Another part wanted everything said out loud where no one could twist it later. Fine, I said. I'll come. If the last meeting had been about denial, this one was about panic. The dining table was covered with papers. A retainer agreement from a white-collar defense firm, printed emails from the AG's office, estimated legal costs circled in red. $45,000 to $65,000, depending on how messy things got. My mom looked like she hadn't slept. Owen was sunk into a chair, hoodie up, eyes ringed in red. My dad gestured for me to sit. All pretense of anger gone. We need your help, he said simply. Owen may need a good lawyer. We can't cover this alone. We know you've done well. We know you have that car. You're the only one who can. My mom's voice broke. He's still your brother. Whatever's gone wrong, you can't just let him face this by himself. I looked at the fee estimate, at my parents, at Owen. For a second, old habits rose up. Fix it, smooth it over, sacrifice quietly. Then that spreadsheet in my head reasserted itself. I'm not letting him face it alone, I said. I already did more to protect this family's finances than anyone else in this room. I flagged a scam that was draining you. I tried to warn you long before the state got involved. You didn't want to hear it. Owen glared, jaw tight. You turned me in because you're angry no one worships your boring job, he said. You have no idea how close we were to real money. One investor meeting and all of this would look different. If an investor was going to appear, they would have by now, I said. Launch Space didn't prep you for funding. They prepped you to keep paying their fees. You brought other people into that. That's why they're looking at you. Not because of me, because of your actions. My dad slammed his palm on the table. Enough blame, he snapped. What matters now is that he needs representation. You bought a $90,000 car. You clearly have money. We're asking you to step up for your brother the way we stepped up for you when you were young. Nadia's voice echoed in my head. They only remember sacrifice when it's yours. What? I worked for that car, I said slowly. Every cent. I also worked for the savings I have now, my safety net, my future down payment on a place that isn't falling apart, my retirement. I'm not going to empty my accounts to patch a hole you refused to even look at when I shined a light on it. My mom whispered, How can you be so cold? I thought of all the times they'd praised me for being low maintenance and strong when what they meant was easy to neglect. I'm not cold, I said quietly. I'm just done setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. You chose where to send your money. You chose to call it tough love when you denied me help and supporting his dream when you bankrolled him. Those choices have consequences. You don't get to invoice me for them now. Owen stared at the table. They're going to destroy my career, he muttered. You don't have a career, I said, not unkindly. You have a LinkedIn headline and a pile of invoices from a scam. This might actually be the first time you've had to live with the consequences of that. That's not destruction, that's reality. My dad stood up, as if height might change my mind. "So that's it? You're just walking away?" I rose too. "No," I said. "I walked away from being your backup plan a long time ago. You only noticed when I parked a Mercedes in front of your house." I picked up my bag and glanced at the documents strewn across the table. "You wanted him treated like an adult founder," I added. "This is what adulthood looks like. Contracts, liabilities, accountability. You don't get to keep pretending he's a gifted kid who needs rescuing." My mom started to cry openly. My dad said my name like a question he didn't know how to finish. Owen didn't say anything. Out in the driveway, the car door thunked shut with a reassuring, solid sound. As I pulled away, I didn't feel guilty. I felt done. Not with my family exactly, but with the idea that I owed them my future in exchange for the scraps of their attention. 2 years later, I pulled that same Mercedes into a different downtown garage. This building wasn't my condo. It was my company's headquarters, and my new keycard didn't just open doors. It had a new title printed under my photo: Director of Portfolio Risk. The boring job had turned into a career that people in my industry respected. I'd left my first condo for a bigger place overlooking Lake Michigan, bought with a second, larger bonus and some well-timed equity. No cosigners. No secret family loans. Just work, smart decisions, and the occasional splurge that I could actually afford. Launch Space Collective didn't survive the investigation. Within 18 months, the state forced it to shut down. Its founders were charged with various forms of fraud. The story made a few headlines in startup circles and then faded. I screenshot the articles and saved them in the same folder where I'd kept my original spreadsheet. A small, quiet vindication. Owen didn't end up in prison, but he didn't walk away untouched either. He took a plea deal, probation, mandatory financial education courses, and in order to repay part of the money he'd effectively helped LaunchSpace pull from other founders he'd recruited, a judge called it a chance to grow up. For once, I agreed. He left his overpriced loft and moved into a smaller, unforgettable apartment. For the first time since college, he got a normal job. Junior UX designer at a mid-size marketing agency. No founder/CEO title, just a manager, deadlines, and feedback he couldn't spin into inspirational posts. My parents' finances took a real hit. Between what they'd already sunk into Owen's company and the legal bills that followed, their retirement timeline was pushed back significantly. My dad picked up consulting gigs. My mom started watching A Neighbor's Kids in the afternoons for extra cash. They stopped bragging about investing in Owen at family gatherings. Our relationship didn't magically reset. There was no tearful group hug, no grand speech of apology. What changed was smaller, but real. My mom texts me on my birthday now, and it's not because an app reminded her. My dad occasionally calls to ask what I think about mutual funds or how I structured my 401k, and he actually listens to the answers. When they talk about Owen, the language has shifted from genius and visionary to he's learning and he's figuring things out. I forgive in increments. I visit once a month if I can. I leave when conversations slide toward guilt or revisionist history. I don't hand out loans. I don't co-sign anything. I'm polite. Sometimes I'm even warm. What I'm not anymore is desperate for them to finally say the words I spent my 20s craving. We see you. We're proud of you. I had to learn to give that to myself. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not buy a $90,000 car to get back at your family. Though I won't pretend parking that Mercedes in their driveway didn't feel satisfying. The real lesson is that favoritism isn't just about who gets more compliments at dinner. It's about who gets bailed out and who gets told to tough it out, whose dreams are funded and whose stability is taken for granted, whose failures are framed as part of the journey, and whose successes are shrugged off as expected. It warps both children. One learns that the rules don't apply to him, that someone will always rescue him, that image matters more than substance. The other learns that being strong means swallowing hurt, performing competence, and accepting invisibility as the price of being okay on your own. I spent years believing that my job as the capable one was to absorb whatever came my way, quietly, and be grateful I could handle it. It took a spreadsheet, a state investigation, and a very loud car to realize that being strong can also mean refusing. Refusing to bankroll other people's denial, refusing to make yourself small so someone else can take up all the space, refusing to accept that you only deserve help if you're in crisis or chaos. If you've ever been the overlooked kid, the one they rely on but don't really see, I want you to hear this clearly. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to walk away from roles that hollow you out, and you do not owe anyone, not even the people who raised you, A lifetime of emotional and financial labor just because they decided your stability made you less worthy of support.